Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
All right, Purple Daily on draft. Every Monday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. This was supposed to be an episode dedicated to Jaren Hall. And we're still going to get into Jaren Hall, don't get me wrong. But Forno, even Phil gave you condolences during Vent Line yesterday, saying like, man, think of everyone I feel the worst for, it's Forno. Because Jaren Hall looks pretty good in those first two drives. He leads them down to the goal line. He takes a nasty hit. I mean, immediately you saw a concussion, and they ruled him out pretty dang quick, too. There was no pause there. I think even us undiagnosed and non-medical professionals saw like, oh, that guy got banged up, and he's probably going to be done. Instead, Josh Dobbs comes in and saves the day, posts the highest QBR of any player, at least on Sunday slate of games, which is absurd. So let's start here. What does Josh Dobbs mean for the Vikings succession plan at quarterback? So I'm not opposed, if he continues to play, decently well, that he could maybe be a bridge guy. Or are you just kind of riding this, summer fling, this little hot thing you got going on here with Josh Dobbs? I guess, Miles, how does Josh Dobbs factor into the Vikings draft plans? Does he factor in at all to what the Vikings should be doing in the NFL draft by April?
I mean, no, he shouldn't as of today, November 6th. He shouldn't factor into anything November 6th. Now let's see how the rest of the season plays out. Like, what's wild is like I know the Case Keenum comparisons are going to come up now because the team's good.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get on a roll and maybe hit the playoffs and all those things. But the Vikings didn't keep Case Keenum. They had every opportunity to keep Case Keenum after that, taking them to the NFC Championship game, and they still didn't want to. And I'm not saying Dobbs is going to do anything close to that, but the performance yesterday, the back half of the game especially was impressive. And on a team that's as talented as this one, it's something you want to see. But as of right now, I think it's way too early to say that he factors in any sort of succession plan. I still think the Vikings would probably still lean on trying to go back to Kirk Cousins or, obviously early in the draft, those types of scenarios before I think Dobbs would become their succession plan. But I think Dobbs has done well enough for himself, and we'll see obviously the rest of the season and into this week and whatnot. But we'll see what happens if he can kind of continue to make a name for himself to maybe be a bridge starter somewhere, whether it is Minnesota or somewhere else. Maybe he could kind of become that Geno Smith type, a guy that's maybe a little bit better than everybody thought he was, and just needed the right environment to kind of get that true opportunity. So I'm just excited to see how it plays out. But as of right now, I don't think it really factors in any decisions the Vikings are going to make moving forward.
And clearly, his smarts are going to get him by crazy.
Yeah,
it's not even the fact that he's one of the smartest guys on the football field. He's smarter than all of us combined, and smarter than a lot of us just average Joes with the dude's educational background.
Yeah, he's played himself into a spot where he's probably going to be in the league for a decade, right? He's the Chase Daniels, all the highly touted backup quarterbacks. He's kind of earning himself that opportunity to at least be that guy for a team. And I think that in itself is always a positive for a guy like him.
All right, Forno, what about you? Do you think Josh Dobbs factors in anything here? Are you just kind of going case by case, week by week basis? What did you think of Josh Dobbs' performance yesterday? And I guess what does it mean for the Vikings' plans at quarterback going forward?
It's a lore performance. This is going to rank up there with the Sam Bradford performance week 2 against the Packers. It's insane what he was able to do, how he was able to do it. And I'm really excited to dive into the film to see how good it actually was, because the vibes were incredible. It was wonderful to watch, and it was fun. The Vikings should have lost this game by 20, and they won. And you can credit Dobbs. Most of the credit, I think, needs to go to Kevin O'Connell and his coaching staff and the culture that they've built. This was a culture win. And you saw in the postgame a speech from O'Connell. None of these guys stopped believing in this team, and it was really impressive. But as far as the future, I think we need to see what Josh Dobbs looks like when he has time in the building, when he has time to learn this offense and operate it with some form of comfort. Because right now this is an anomaly, and it's not to diminish how great the performance was. After that rough start, he balled, and it was awesome. But is it professional football or is it street ball? Because on Sunday they played street ball and it worked and they got a win. It was great. But now when you're projecting forward, you can't do that every week. You have to have some form of cohesion. You have to have some form of chemistry. And how is that going to build and how is that going to manifest? I think that's going to determine what Josh Dobbs is. And if he's only at a certain level, I think you need to play Jaren Hall because he's the young guy who's an unknown and you need to see what he has. And he played well to start the game. This is a very fluid situation moving forward because of how great Dobbs was. But there's no guarantees and we shouldn't expect anything other than the unknown right now, because there's also a reason why Josh Dobbs has been with 5 organizations over the course of the last 12 calendar months. It's not because he doesn't have talent. It's because nobody has ever viewed him as the guy or a guy that we really need to keep on this football team. It's a complete unknown variable right now. I keep referencing that math problem in Goodwill Hunting. Find the variable answer. Once you do, you're going to have a clearer picture. And right now, it's a very murky picture at the quarterback position for the Vikings for a number of reasons. And the Dobbs performance yesterday just puts another wrench into the equation.
My spidey senses, pun intended, went up when you said anomaly, because I just watched Across the Spider-Verse over the weekend, and which was, by the way, a phenomenal film. I love the first one. I finally got to see the second one. I meant to see it in theater, just summer got away from me, so I watched it on Netflix over the weekend. And you brought the term anomaly, and I'm sorry if I'm spoiling anything here, but that's what Miles Morales realized, that he's the first anomaly of all these Spider-Man and all these different Spider-Verses and across the world, and his ripple effect caused canon disruptions. And I could go on for days about how awesome that is, but there is actually like a weird parallel here between both those things, right, Miles? I mean, you're talking about Josh Dobbs stepping in here, and now all of a sudden a guy who was traded as mostly an insurance policy because they needed someone after Kirk goes down, steps in and now changes potentially like the direction of this team. Like I'm with you guys that, hey, got to go week by week here. They're not going to obviously just change everything after one really cool game against the Falcons. But it is an interesting thought process that like Josh Dobbs comes in here, doesn't know the playbook, doesn't even know his teammates. No one knows the cadence of his snap count, so he has to pull his center and the offensive line aside on the sideline to figure things out. The whole thing to me, I think, is super fascinating, and I think that's why it's so cool.
Isn't this just like peak Vikings, Minnesota Vikings? Because like throughout the 90s, early 2000s, before like Dante Culpepper got drafted, and it was like Randall Cunningham. You had Warren Moon, all these different Brad Johnson, all these different like stopgap quarterbacks coming in and kind of filling in. Some of them would play well early, and then they'd kind of keep a job for a little bit. Then they get usurped by somebody else, and all this like revolving door at quarterback. And like I hope that doesn't happen here, but I think Dobbs might be that other guy like a Brooks Bollinger, some of that like, oh, we might keep this guy around and let him like be a bridge, let him be like a guy that starts a few games a season or what have you. And the Vikings have kind of been good at that, at finding those types of quarterbacks.
And so does his dog. The dog agrees too.
And Teddy agrees too. Yeah.
Teddy totally agrees. I love that. It
wasn't Odie. Let's just take that as a win.
I was gonna say I'm usually at studio for our Monday show. Otherwise, Vinny would be doing the same thing. We're all used to our barking dogs in the background. Hey Forno, so what were your thoughts on Jaren Hall? I know limited action, just a couple drives there, and I even saw Kevin O'Connell. We're recording this around 1 p.m. Central on Monday. He already named Josh Dobbs the starter. Jaren Hall is still in concussion protocol.
Oh, he did. I missed that. Sorry, real quick. Sorry, I missed that he named him the starter.
Yeah, I think I saw Will Raggets, I believe, tweet that out about 45 minutes ago before.
The wording was they're going to prepare for him to be the starter, but considering it's a concussion, I don't see any other way for Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
So Forno, what did you think of his performance? And I saw you tweet that he deserves still another look, even though he's in concussion protocol and Josh Dobbs potentially has this job by the horns right now.
Yeah, I think he does deserve another look. And let's go into the why behind that before we go into the performance. The why behind it is because you have a rookie quarterback who acquitted himself well in the 2 drives that he had, and you still have a lot of unknown with him. Dobbs has 10 starts in the league. He's about to get his 11th. He's been in the league since 2017. He's a relatively known commodity. So you have an unknown with potential, and you just don't know what that potential is yet because you need to see more on the field during live game action. If they're relatively equal, or even if Dobbs is slightly higher than Hall, I think you need to roll with the young guy to kind of see what you have. That, in my opinion, is good team building, and it's good understanding of how to continue to develop your players. You have an opportunity to get a young quarterback reps. Take it. Like, it's not like we're benching Kirk Cousins. We're benching Josh Dobbs, who's brought in as that insurance policy. So that's why I think that. But it also looks, you got to look at the play as part of that equation. He was doing stuff that Kirk Cousins was doing on a regular basis. He was canning at the line of scrimmage. So he was essentially changing the play. So more often than not, these quarterbacks are sent to in multiple plays. And you look at the coverage, you look at what the defense is doing, and then you change it at the line. So when they go can, that's what they're doing. They are signaling what the play is going to be to the rest of the team. He was doing that. He was making calls at the line of scrimmage. He looked relatively comfortable in the pocket. And that throw to Alexander Mattison was awesome because he didn't get fooled by that coverage shift. So it started off with a cover 2 look, and then they rotated the safety down and over to just get MOFC, middle of the field, closed. So it's a single high coverage. And then Madison takes over the top, the corner, and there's just no way that middle of the field safety can go over and get to the sideline to make a play on the ball. 47-yard gain. Those little things make a difference. Now he's got to hit Hawkinson on that little floater. He missed it. But I don't see that as being, it's not a bad decision. It's just slightly off target. You can work on those little things. The big things, they trusted him. It looked like with the entire playbook based on how they were allowing him to operate at the line of scrimmage. That's a good thing, especially for a 5th round rookie, that you trust him to operate like that at the line of scrimmage. They weren't trusting him like a rookie. They were trusting him like a quarterback. And I think that's important to think about when we're talking about how this is going to project the rest of the year. Hall could still be a nothing guy. But here's the thing, we don't know. And until you have that answer, I think when they're relatively equal, unless Dobbs just throws for 5 touchdowns and runs for another one on Sunday and just has like an outstanding performance, I think you need to go back to Hall and see what you have.
Yeah, so I really wanted to see, I was just gonna jump in and say what I wanted to see is like those first couple of drives for Hall. You could tell that they're a lot more scripted plays, and not any negative. That's no shade toward Hall. Like the first few drives are supposed to be a little bit more scripted, more controlled, and I think that's a good thing for a young quarterback to kind of get himself into a rhythm. What I was hoping to see from Hall is like how he handled that second and third quarter. You know, when the game starts kind of ebbs and flows, and you're kind of getting into things where the unknowns start hitting. I just really wanted to see that, and so I think that's one of the unfortunate parts about him getting hurt is like we didn't get to really see how he was going to settle into things and how he's going to handle like the defense is giving him different looks and like him going off script and some of those different things. So I was really excited to just like see that. So I think that's the difference for me between him and Dobbs right now is like if the Vikings had lost yesterday or they had lost against last week against Green Bay, or they've kind of been in a situation where they really weren't like truly in the playoff hunt, I think it would make a lot of sense to go right back to Jaren Hall whenever he's healthy. But I think the tough part is the way Dobbs played at the end of the game yesterday and moving forward for a team that is 5-4 and looking to get into the playoffs. It's hard to just say, hey, if Dobbs is still playing decently well and we're winning games, it's hard to just say, go right back to Jaren Hall. But I'm with you in that I would love to see him get more opportunity because I think you do want to find out what you have in a guy like him because you did put even a small investment into him. So if you can find out a little bit more of what he is behind this, or at least on game days, I think that'd be a big tell for you. I don't think it changed anything in terms of like long-term process, but I think it at least maybe he's your long-term backup or, bridge, could be even a potential bridge guy too. So I'm with you on that.
There's still a non-zero chance he's the franchise quarterback. That's minimal. It's very minimal. But if you have that opportunity, you got.
But did he get Wally pipped? Right?
There's a chance, but you're also going to see how Kevin O'Connell kind of called the game. Now there's a little bit of film on him. How much of that can you actually take to the bank?
Oh, I know.
Different story, but
the athleticism though is one thing that I think I'm excited to see O'Connell bake into his offense a little bit more. And I'm sure he was going to do that with Hall too, because we know Hall has functional athleticism. But I am excited to see, like with Dobbs being the full-time, at least the starter this week, he's planned to be the starter this week. They're going to start baking in some of those maybe RPOs and designed runs that because the run game, we'll probably get into this, but the run game has been awful. So like maybe if Dobbs can help usurp, fix some of that with his legs, and like he did yesterday, that just is going to help go a long way. But I think Hall could do some of that as well.
I do want to ask you guys about the Vikings running game, but before we get to that, I guess I don't think we really discussed this because we were still like absorbing the Kirk Cousins news with the Achilles injury, knowing he was going to be out for the season. And then even over the weekend, I saw Diane Rossini and others basically say, like, hey, there's still talks that the Vikings reunion could happen with Kirk Cousins. What would you guys want to do here? Are you in the camp of wanting to re-sign him now? Do you want to roll the dice and take this to free agency? I guess, Forno, what would you want to do with Kirk Cousins going forward here? Are you wanting to lock him up ASAP, or would you rather kind of let this season play out and maybe even get into a bidding war with other teams?
I want to know the medicals and I want to know the price. And until then, it's really hard for me to make any sort of comment outside of that, because he's a 35-year-old with a ruptured Achilles tendon. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but how much of that will he be robbed of? Because that's a brutal injury for any athlete to come back from. Like Cam Akers is about to go through his second torn Achilles, and he's 24, 25 years old. Like, realistically, that could be the end of his career. And not to be a doomer, but that's just what type of injury that is. It's brutal. So I want to know how he's going to recover from it. And in 3.5 months, like mid-February. So the big date, I believe, is February 20th. It might be the 28th. I'll have to fact check it. But his contract voids before free agency. So if his contract voids, all that
March 15th.
Well, there's two dates. There's the beginning of free agency, and then there's the void dates. Because remember, last year, Dalvin Tomlinson's contract, they actually moved it back because that voided on the 20th. I'll look it up on over the cap here in a second.
I know I'm looking right now too. So keep going.
Whenever that date is, that's going to be the pivotal date. They can always negotiate to move that void date back like they did with Tomlinson last year. But otherwise, all that $28.25 million, that's going to hit next year no matter what. So then that complicates you bringing him back. Whereas if you re-signed him right now, it would be, I think, a $10.5 million cap hit. And then you would just have whatever gets added on with the contract. So I want to know more of the medicals and then what the price will be, because of the Achilles tendon, maybe teams don't want to bring him in as their starter because he's going to be turning 36, coming off a ruptured Achilles. That could be a real detriment to anybody actually wanting him in their building at that price. So there's so many variables here, and I want some more data before I really make a calculated decision. But I can tell you this, the team wants him back. Everything that we're hearing, everything that they're saying, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah in press conferences, Kevin O'Connell, the reactions after he ruptured his Achilles, they all want him back and they all love him. So it might not matter what we think. They may just get it done.
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. This is going to be just such an interesting situation for him because, does he accept less money just to know he can be back? Does he have a price point that he's not going to negotiate afterwards from a floor standpoint? Like, there's just there's a lot of different wrinkles here, and the Vikings are now on their fourth quarterback option here in Josh Dobbs, and it's working. I mean, there's somehow, if the playoffs started today, they would be in the playoffs. Like, that also part is kind of wild to me in a weaker NFC, but
well,
really
quick,
cool, really good stuff.
The wild part to me about this whole Kirk Cousins situation is he ruptured his Achilles a week ago, but for the last 2 years, him and Kwesi and the Vikings and Kirk Cousins camp have not been able to come to agreement on a long-term extension, even a short-term, long-term, like anything. But all of a sudden, he tears his Achilles, and now it's like, okay, Kirk's coming back. We got our quarterback for 2024, and be like, I just think it's maybe too, it's way too early to have this prediction that he's going to be back. I'm not saying anybody's saying, hey, Kirk Cousins is automatically coming back. I just think if Kwesi was tough on him before to get an extension done when he was fully healthy, I can only imagine that type of negotiation period where he's going to be like, dude, you literally just tore your Achilles. You're going to be 36 years old, and your Achilles tear isn't even your off foot. It's his drive foot. So Kirk Cousins already doesn't have the strongest arm in the league, but now he might lose some of that zip from the drive foot he's got. And I think that in itself is if you're Kwesi come February, March, it's hey, here's a contract in front of you of literally the structure that I want it to be. You either take it or good luck. And that's what it feels like. Kwesi's kind of been playing hardball. So I just wouldn't be surprised if some of the news coming out right now is more of Kirk definitely wants to be back, and I could understand both sides wanting both sides back, but that negotiating period is going to be really tricky because there's a lot of information that both of you mentioned that just isn't available yet, that we can't really even quantify. And so it's so tough to say in November, that Kirk Cousins is going to be in the future plans come February, March, when it's only going to be like 5 months since his injury.
An update. Cousins does void on the 15th of March. It's Marcus Davenport's that voids on the 20th.
Okay.
Oh, so they got a little bit more time with Davenport in. Okay.
No, less time with Davenport.
You said the 20th?
20th of February.
Oh, February. Okay.
I was assuming March too.
Yeah, I was
assuming March too. Let's go to the running back well here. So Alexander Mattison, not really an effective option still. He can pass, he can catch some touchdowns. He's a okay option, I guess, in the flat here and there. But in general, the running game is struggling. You just lost Cam Akers to the season for the whole season now. What do you do? Do you put Ty Chandler in there more, who has shown a little bit when he's been called upon? Or, and this kind of came to me late last night after we got done talking, was do you activate Dwayne McBride, who we were all pretty high on in the draft, who's on your practice squad still? What do you do to get this Vikings running game going? I guess, Miles, what would you want to see? Who do you want to see get more touches? Who do you want to see get more activated, I guess? What do you want to see the Vikings do to get this running game back in the right direction?
I think that's a good question. Also, to start, really feel for Cam Akers. Forno mentioned earlier, a couple of years ago, he tore his Achilles. He's able to come back in 6 months, which is crazy for a skill position player. But, it's really tough to see. I think he was the one guy that had a little bit more, consistency for the running back group. Obviously, I think Madison probably had his best game yesterday, but that was more in the passing game. But Akers was somebody that looked good, and I thought you could maybe sprinkle in more. It looked like he was getting more of a 50-50 split. So really feel for him there. I think what the Vikings kind of have to do is they got to internally just discuss what's our best path forward. Do we need to get Ty Chandler more involved? I think we've seen Ty Chandler involved, snippets here and there. It's clear that they don't trust him enough to take over a timeshare. But I think you're going to have to kind of trial by fire force that situation to happen, because I don't think Madison's good enough to carry the load in that capacity. And he's also not the explosive entity you need in that area as well. So maybe Kenny Nwangu, who was a healthy scratch yesterday, maybe they get him more involved. I think Dwayne McBride's a good opportunity. Maybe they call him up, but I just think they're at a point where it's more the scheme than it might just be the players that they have back there. And I think that's the biggest issue that they're running into. That doesn't mean that the running backs are running all that great, but I also think that the run game, the scheme and the players just aren't stepping up. And I think they need to kind of figure out internally, how do we offset some of that? And is there a new guy that could come off the street or someone's practice squad that could really fix that? I doubt it. The trade deadline's passed. Most free agents or anybody that's actually worth anything is probably scooped up or not available. So you're kind of in a situation where it's you guys, you have what you have. And unless someone hits the streets somehow tomorrow, then you're kind of going to have to figure it out with the guys you have.
Fono, what do you want to see, I guess, utilized differently here on the running game? Because you can't obviously abandon it. They have to set up play action. They have to do other things to get the pass game going. And, Josh Dobbs changes things a little bit too, right? The guy can run a little bit, so it's not necessarily just getting a more running back involved. You could have Josh Dobbs use his legs and use design runs and do other things to, pick up yards that way. But I guess what do you want to see happen here to get this running game back in the right direction?
I don't know. Then that's a tough part, because the success rate was high. I don't have the numbers after yesterday, but I know it was awful in the first half and it was pretty decent in the second half. But a couple weeks ago, they were 7th in the NFL in success rate on the ground, which that's pretty good. And being able to be successful on those rushing plays is a net positive, but they're not able to generate explosives and they're far from consistent. And it's about Madison being able to read his blocks. It's about explosiveness. And there's so many little things that he does well. There's so many things that he doesn't. And that's why he was so inexpensive on the contract. It's also why I didn't like the contract, because I just didn't think what he brought to the table was good enough to be a top back. I really like Ty Chandler, but some of the little things he just doesn't do very well in comparison to Madison. That's why he's not getting a lot of run. Now he's probably going to. But is it going to be a 50-50 split like it was with Cam Akers? Probably not. You're probably going to see Ty Chandler go back to getting a couple drives a game until he proves himself. I still don't think Nwangwu has proven anything to show that he can be a running back in the National Football League. He's electric with the ball in his hands, but sometimes you're just not good enough to play a position and you're a return guy. And I think that's probably where we're going to end up with Nwangwu. A little frustrating, but sometimes it just happens. The running back is it maybe doesn't matter per se in the National Football League compared to other positions, it's still a difficult position to play. And there's a reason why you might be able to find a guy in round 5 because he just doesn't have like a lot of the athletic traits that you're looking for, but he has so much else and they can be successful right away in the league. But there's a reason why it's tough and there's a lot of changeover. It's not just because of the shelf life. It's because it's tough. It's a hard position. And I don't think the Vikings are going to be able to do anything really to truly fix their running game until the offseason when they're able to bring in a better back. Because I don't think it really mattered who was the back yesterday. The right side got smoked almost every single time they tried to run the football. O'Neal and Ingram just got cooked. Bradbury wasn't very good either. Like the running game was bad for multiple reasons. And we just may have a bad running game and just kind of have to deal with it.
I wasn't able to ask you guys about this because obviously the trade deadline happened after we were done recording, but what did you make of the Ezra Cleveland trade? So Cleveland ends up getting traded to the Jaguars. The Vikings get a day 3 pick back. Cleveland's been having a good year. He's entering a contract year, so I guess the Vikings kind of hedged of, all right, we can get something immediately in the draft instead of waiting for a comp pick in the future draft. Miles, what did you think of the Ezra Cleveland trade? Did that one surprise you at all, or were you also kind of in the camp of, hey, they actually get some value back now, this is a good move for the Vikings?
Yeah, it didn't surprise me. I think we'd kind of been hearing rumblings, coming from like people like Doogie and other folks that like the Vikings weren't tied to Ezra Cleveland long term. Like I think they were like, okay, we're cool with having him as the rest of the season starter. Then they obviously bring in Dalton Reisner and that kind of shifted things once Cleveland got hurt. And it sounds like Cleveland might still want to have the opportunity maybe go to tackle. It never felt like Ezra Cleveland was someone that they were like invested in. And if you're not going to bring a guy like that back and you can get an early 6th round pick, I view that as like, hey, I'm good with it because I think everybody talks about the comp pick formula. Everybody's like, oh, you could get like a higher comp pick. I don't think you're going to get anything more than a 5th, 6th round pick for Ezra Cleveland. I don't expect him to go break the bank anywhere. Like he's good. He's been a solid player, but I don't think he's like someone that you go invest. A team's going to go invest a lot of money into that would really impact the comp pick. But at the same time with the comp pick, like playing that game in itself is dangerous. Like what I'm glad that they did is they said, well, let's just cut bait now. Because if we have to play that comp pick format game, that impacts who we try to sign in free agency, who we don't. And now you like guarantee yourself the draft pick rather than kind of hoping you can get a 5th or late 6th round, draft pick in 2025. So I was good with it. And it sounds like they like Blake Brandel as well, who's been kind of playing the interior this year especially. And so I think I'm good with it. Like I think maybe Reisner is more in your long-term plans than Ezra Cleveland might be.
Forno, did you expect them to get a little more for Ezra Cleveland, or were you good with the 6th round pick?
Initially, I was really upset about the 6th round pick. I thought they should have at least gotten a 5th. I thought they could have potentially gotten a 4th because of what Cleveland was. But sometimes, even if your asset is worth X, doesn't mean the market's going to give you that. And that's just something like take a look at crude oil. Oil just goes up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
Like we still need it relatively the same. But at the end of the day, if it's worth $45 a barrel, you're going to pay $45 a barrel. Like and teams just did not want to pay more than a 6th. Now, I will say, if you expect a comp 5th back and you don't want to deal with that compensatory formula, the Vikings basically got best value because they didn't just get a 6th round pick. They got a 6th round pick that belongs to the Carolina Panthers, which is probably top 3 in the round. If it's top 3 in the round, that's only 3 picks off from being a compensatory 5th. So it's basically the same value. And now I would expect that the Vikings are going to do some movement in free agency. They have at minimum 13 roster spots open after the year because they have 40 guys signed through next year. So how is it going to impact? And I wouldn't expect them to get a comp pick back in 2025 because I would expect them to do a little bit more damage, especially with how much money they have to play with. Right now it's slated at about $55 million. That's not including any money you give to Christian Darrisaw, Justin Jefferson, but Jefferson's cap hit probably goes down for that year anyways because of how extensions work. And I'm looking at it and it's fine. They were going to play him anyway. Chris Reed just got his practice window activated. He's going to come back. He's a guard center option. And they feel comfortable at their depth. And I think they're right in feeling that, especially after the performance by Quessenberry yesterday.
We haven't done any mock
Hey,
draft
they also
stuff.
they also saved $1 million in cap space, and I think that in itself is something.
Yeah.
Like, especially for a team that's kind of have like
Pushing
$8 or $9 million.
pennies,
Yeah, like that $1 million in season especially matters.
That's how you got Josh Dobbs, because Dobbs is just under $1 million.
Yeah, they basically, like, when you offset them, I think you save $1 million with Ezra Cleveland, like getting rid of Ezra Cleveland.
Yeah, nice little cap gymnastics there from Quay. So that's the wrong sounder. I want this one. All right. So we haven't done many mock drafts in season yet on this show, but I did see one from Pro Football Focus. It set off Tyler Forness on Twitter, and I'm going to set him off again on the podcast here. So this is from Pro Football Focus. It's a mock draft, and I'm going to spare you all the picks. There is some trades in here, like the Cardinals did a trade, I think, to 4. Let's see here. Obviously, Caleb Williams. Actually, the Giants traded up to number 1 in this mock. That is wild. So pretty crazy little mock draft. It is November still. We're always in mock draft season, though. So in this mock, the Vikings are picking 20th. So they are on the clock at pick 20. And with the 20th overall pick in the draft, the Minnesota Vikings select cornerback Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. A cornerback production remains one of the top long-term needs for the Vikings. Wiggins has serious ball skills, and at 6'2", 185 pounds, he is one of the top cover players in the class. Now, Forno, I'm going to give you the floor here because you were making the point to us off mic. You made some points I saw on Twitter or X. I'm always calling it Twitter. I refuse to call it X. That cornerback room is developing here a little bit. It's showing signs of life. You don't have to waste your first-round pick on cornerback. So I guess why disagree with the notion that the Vikings should take a cornerback with their first-round selection?
Why take a cornerback? And I think it's just become a, for lack of a better term, lazy national narrative that the Vikings just need a cornerback, because it just felt like they've needed a cornerback for about 5 years. And they invested a lot of resources in the last 2 off seasons into the position. Byron Murphy on that deal. And then they drafted Mekhi Blackman, Andrew Booth Jr., and Caleb Evans, all of whom have seen some form of relative success. When Booth has been in there this year, he's played well. Blackman, as a rookie, has played well. Evans has proven himself to be a legitimate starting cornerback in the league. Why would you continue to use assets on that position when the position right now is good, capable, and you have multiple guys through the 2024 season under contract? And Byron Murphy, if you want to extend him, should be relatively easy to extend. I don't see why that's a good use of your resources and assets, considering you could be without 2 edge rushers, 3 edge rushers, with DJ Wanham also having his contract expire. The defensive line is brutal and needs reinforcements badly. And you may need to attack receiver even before cornerback, because KJ Osborne's probably not coming. I'm not advocating for taking a wide receiver in round 1, but if a great one is there, why the heck not? Plus, quarterback. They passed on JJ McCarthy in this mock. Like, we're going to ignore the fact that Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. were at 6 and 12, which that's an entirely different discussion, which they probably shouldn't even be close to round 1. But cornerback just feels like, oh, the Vikings always need cornerback help. Let's put them in there. You watch this team, they don't need cornerback help. They're playing well. And you got to attack other positions, especially Jared Verse from Florida State, went at pick 21. McCarthy, pick 26. To me, it's just not understanding where the Vikings are at as far as where their development curve is and how their resources are projecting out moving forward. And to say cornerback is that need, I think is just blatantly incorrect.
Miles, are you against taking a quarterback here early in the draft, or would you, if the board fell out a certain way, are you for it? I guess where do you fall on the Vikings taking a cornerback in this mock draft?
Yeah, I'm not usually one to like overreact to like November mock drafts, but I agree with, like, I was looking at it and that's what set me off. The 2 things that set me off were like Jared Verse and JJ McCarthy, both available at pick 20, but the Vikings decide cornerback is the biggest need. He's like the best player available, and that to me at this stage just isn't right. So yeah, I just don't think cornerback is something that you should be focusing on early in the draft for the Vikings when they have so many other needs on the defensive side and at quarterback. And if a quarterback like McCarthy is available, it'd be really hard, like, to watch this team again pass up a quarterback for the 3rd, 4th straight year in a row, where like they have a guy that could fall in their lap and they just keep passing on that guy. Because at that point I'd be like, well, is the front office and ownership just like terrified of making a move at that position. And if they are, then that to me would raise the biggest red flag. Like if they're scared to take a guy or go get a guy, like that stuff to me is like, I'm at that stage where they're at, like roster wise, where if they're afraid to make a move on somebody, then I'm probably going to raise some red flags. Those are the things that really set me off. Like I said, like a November mock draft, it's hard to like truly predict the things that are going to happen. Anything could change between now and, February, March, April, before, heading into the draft season. Like guys could get hurt, guys could get, in trouble. Anything could really happen where that really changes the outcome of your team. But as of right now, come November, early November, I'd say I have a hard time seeing cornerback be that first pick at 20 with those guys, especially with those guys available.
Before we wrap here on Purple Daily on draft, some college football stuff. Forno, I know you wanted to make the point about Caleb Williams, who lost a tough one over the weekend, and I guess some people had a problem with him going up to his parents to stand and showing emotion and crying and whatnot. So I want to, again, maybe give you the floor here to kind of defend that notion. By the way, I'm totally with you, that, look, if anyone's showing emotion and heart like that, I love that. I don't like the robotic, just no emotion, and you're being soft or you're being too soft because you're showing tears or something. I guess, what did you think of Caleb Williams showing all that emotion after a tough loss over the weekend?
As weird as it is to say, I loved it. I don't ever want to see anybody manifest that kind of sadness and be upset, but it also shows how much he cares. And if you watch that Washington USC game, it was fantastic. They went blow for blow, and it was tied at 42 before Washington ended up taking the lead and winning 52-42. But Caleb Williams put everything he has into football and put everything he has into that game. And for Alex Grinch's defense, who was finally fired on Sunday afternoon, which should have happened years ago when Grinch was still at Oklahoma, but that's another story. When you put everything you have and then to not be able to see it manifest the way you wanted it to because of everything you put in and how well he played, emotions can get the better of people. And he expressed it in a healthy way. He wasn't attacking people. He wasn't throwing people under the bus. And we also have to remember, he's a 20-year-old kid. He's still learning how to be an adult. He's still learning how to play the game of football. Like it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And anybody who is hating on it, they stink. Just absolutely stink. It's so frustrating that we're hating on this kid. And I saw so many people like, oh, I want nothing to do with Caleb Williams. Kirk Cousins would never do that. If Kirk Cousins went up to his wife and was crying after that playoff win and he caught it on camera, everybody would be defending Kirk because of the same reasons I brought up with Caleb Williams, because he would be so passionate about wanting to win that his emotions got the better of him and he let it out in a healthy way, nonetheless. Yeah. Like to me, it's a big nothing burger. And I actually like Caleb Williams a little bit more because of how he was able to manifest and just show that vulnerability. Because you know what? You don't need to always be the tough guy. And growing up, our father's generation, you had to be the tough guy. You couldn't show emotion. And some of that was kind of passed on to us, but we also started to understand that it's okay to show emotion. It's okay to cry and be upset. Caleb Williams doing that is fine. We really should be shaming ESPN for focusing on him now. And the second you realize, oh, he's crying with his mom, maybe get the camera off of him. We don't need that kind of moment to be plastered all over national television. It's fine. The guy wants to win and he busted his ass to win. That's the end of it.
I agree. Yeah, if Kirk would have let out some tears after that wildcard loss, I would not have judged him. And to your point, I think
he might have.
And he might have.
We just don't know.
That is for sure, too.
Same moment was Kirk Cousins. Those same people attacking Caleb Williams would be praising Kirk. It's the Caleb Williams versus Tim Tebow thing. Both of them should be praised for putting everything they had. And you know what? They got emotional after losing a big game. It's the exact same thing.
The part that bothers me is like, maybe Caleb Williams like most players, they go and talk to their families after games before they head to the locker room, right? And maybe when I'm assuming that's his mom. I think everybody keeps saying it. I don't want to assume anything, but I'm guessing it's his mom. Like if it was my parent, my loved one, and I like the emotions just, you ever like give somebody you care about like a hug and like you've had all these emotions built up and sometimes you give that person you care about a hug and it just like comes out. That's happened to me. And like, I wonder if like he might not have even had any intention of crying, but he walks up to his mom, and like the second she gives him a hug, it just like comes out, right? Because you're with people that like, genuinely care about you. They like, there's like, and you couldn't just hold it in. Like that happens. Like it's sports. Like I think the thing that people forget about athletes and sports in itself is like, as someone that did play, and like I still like love sports and love to play sports, but like as someone that did play, like your emotions run so hot. And it was so hard sometimes to not like, I've let it out in unhealthy ways. Like when I played baseball, I used to throw my glove at times. Like my dad would lay into me. But like then there's times like, you give your parents a hug or you give someone a hug and like you just burst out into tears. Like there's so many, like it's better than going up to people and just like screaming. Like how many times have I seen a coach or had a coach like scream at us after a really tough loss? And like that's supposed to be viewed as like a healthy thing. When in reality, like there's other ways to go about it rather than just like totally blaming people and yelling at people and it becoming this like huge rush of emotions. Like I think, like you said, like both of you said, like he let his emotions out in a healthy way, and it shouldn't be viewed in this way. 2023, where like men can no longer like cry because they're feeling like this rush of emotions. Like that should be okay. Like. And there should be nothing like in terms of his future as an NFL quarterback, as a player, as a leader that has any negative impact to this. Shouldn't be none. And I'm sure, but go ahead.
Dude just wanted to go home and cuddle his dog. All of us can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, healthy stuff here on Purple Daily on Draft. Okay, not just NFL and football takes, but also your emotion draft takes. Okay, these are all good things, all good things to get out. Fellas, great show here. Great stuff. For anyone listening, hit the subscribe button and like button right here on Purple Daily's YouTube channel for daily Vikings entertainment. Give us a 5-star review. However you're listening, Apple, Spotify, the Score North app, we appreciate that. Every Monday right here, this is Purple Daily on Draft on the Purple Daily YouTube channel and podcast feed.